Morning, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, and I'm here at Rancho Mission Canyon Open Space Park in the southwestern portion of the canyon, and today it is time for a Spotlight on Shrubs video. And today, my focus is on the Slender Golden Currant, and it's this beautiful shrub right here. This is Ribes aureum variety gracillimum. Ribes aureum variety gracillimum. It is a small to medium, sometimes densely thicket forming drought-deciduous shrub in the Gooseberry/currant family, the Grossulariaceae. So what we have here is a small, possibly a relict population of a plant that is usually not found super far or super often below LA County. Here in San Diego County, it's actually downright rare. So what we have here is this unarmed shrub. In other words, it doesn't have the spines and thorns, or doesn't have the spiny branch tissue that the closely related gooseberries have. Currants are usually unarmed. And as you see here, we are in March, so we are in the rainy season, so this plant is nice, leafy, and in full bloom. So I mentioned that it was deciduous. Now, a lot of people think of deciduous as being shedding leaves in fall, leafless in winter, and leafy during the spring and summer months. However, this one tends to be a little bit more on the drought-deciduous side. In other words, shedding its leaves during the dryness of summer and fall, and being leafless until probably early midwinter, when the rains start moistening the soil enough for this plant to uptake the water through its roots. And a lot of our native gooseberries and currants exhibit that trait. It is a way for them to basically be a drought avoider, and that's a pretty common tactic in plants in climates with low yearly rainfall or extremely dry long periods of the year. And this is one of a good few species that we have here that exhibit that trait. So what we have are these beautiful, beautiful leafy shrubs here with these somewhat maple-shaped leaves. Now, the leaves are a little bit variable on portions of the stem, but usually they exhibit three main lobes with a little bit of side lobing on each lobe. Sometimes the lobing varies on different portions of the plant. This one has the same three main lobes, but less lobing, or less extra lobing on the sides of it. So the leaves are quite variable. This one right here just has three lobes with some scallop-toothed edges. So the leaves, again, are palmately lobed. That's what this is considered, is palmately lobed. In other words, roughly the shape of a hand or a mitten or a glove. Nice light green. It may change some color as the leaves are shedding off in summer, but I've only observed this plant on 2 occasions. So let me go get a picture or two of this, and we're going to start talking about more parts of this plant. All right, so what else do we have going on with this plant? Well, the obvious are these late winter and early spring flowers. And it's one of our relatively few here in Southern California that have a golden flower. Flowers on currants and gooseberries are quite variable depending on the species. And I'm going to compare and contrast this with a close relative that is growing in the immediate vicinity. So, as you see here, I'm just going to make sure I don't pick a branch or touch a branch that has a bee all over it. We have these small 5-petaled yellow flowers that are kind of tubular as you move down the flower towards the flower stalks. So yes, 5-petaled, brilliant yellow, hence the name aureum, which is Latin for golden, and also the name golden in the golden currant. Now, this variant here, variety gracillimum, is pretty similar to its regular variant, variety aureum, Ribes aureum variety aureum, which this video is not going to focus on because that variant doesn't grow here. But I will have to mention a few things about that one in relationship to its brother here. So, I believe the slender, the gracillimum, which means most slender or most graceful in Latin, I think it deals with it might deal with the flowers. It might deal with the slender nature of the flower tube right here. I believe that's where that comes from. Now, this shrub here is generally found in the coastal portions of central down to Southern California, mostly in the coastal range foothills. I tried to find a pretty specific range map on this plant before coming out here because I knew this is what I was going to spotlight today. But I've noticed that some sites will show it covering from roughly near the Bay Area down here to Southern California. And this one's more of a coastal variant. So it likely has a lesser cold tolerance than its main variant, the Ribes aureum variety aureum, the golden currant. Ribes aureum variety aureum, I believe, is much more widely distributed here in North America. I believe it covers a large portion of the continent, especially in the United States. But this one is more of a coast range to lower foothill variant here in California. If I find a little more information on this before submitting the video, I will put some edits in the comments. But really cool looking shrub. Definitely brightens up these slopes here in March. And so I was mentioning that these flowers, golden yellow, brilliant flowers, will eventually start aging off. As you can see here, some of these are starting to age with a little bit of a reddish hue in them. As you might slightly see here, there's a slight reddish senescing of the flowers. But that's before they start fizzling out, and sometimes before they start opening up, the tube will have a reddish color. So, very beautiful flower. You can see some of these older flowers here seem to have some orange in them as well. But the predominant color is definitely golden. And then eventually, these will turn into small berry-like fruit that'll probably be about this large and should ripen off to a reddish color. I've yet to see this plant in full fruit. But I figured this is the time to get the spotlight video because I wanted to see this plant in bloom. Absolutely beautiful shrub here. No fruit developing yet that I could see. But in my next segment, I want to talk a little bit more about other characteristics of this plant, such as twigs, stems, bark, and its preferred habitat. So stay tuned for that in my next segment, after I snap a couple pictures of this beautiful plant. Alright, so we talked about the foliage, and we talked about the drought-deciduous nature of this plant, shedding its leaves during the drier parts of the year so that it can conserve energy for when the rains come, provide enough moisture in the soil, and then this plant can leaf out and be fully verdant and fully florific. But there's a lot more to this plant than just the flowers, the fruit, and the leaves. Of course, we've got stems and bark. So these younger twigs here tend to have a mostly medium grayish color, relatively smooth, and no thorny or spiny sections, as this is a currant, and currants are generally spineless as opposed to their very close relatives, the gooseberries, again, also in the genus Ribes. So that's one way you can tell that this is a currant as opposed to a gooseberry. And I am going to go into a species of gooseberry that is growing right next to this momentarily, so I can do a little contrast for you. So as we move down the stem, see, we still have this mild grayish, medium gray bark, and then it eventually grades into a woodier stem with generally a very similar color, as you see here. That medium gray becomes a little darker as you move down the stem. You can see here the trunks are much darker. So yeah, as you can see here, that darker colored bark. That's what I had to stop the video for a minute so I can get a closer picture of it. But yeah, look at the dark gray bark, some white splotching on it. Might be due to lichens. Sometimes I notice that, especially on gooseberries and currants. But pretty beautiful colors. So now I did mention that we do have a close relative in this canyon. So let's go take a look at a close relative, and how can we tell the difference between these two close relatives? How can we tell the difference? Well, we do have a close relative, as I mentioned, and it's this here. This is fuchsia-flowered gooseberry, Ribes speciosum, which is, again, in the genus Ribes, so it's related to the golden currant that I'm focusing on today. You can refer to my Spotlight on Shrubs video on the fuchsia-flowered gooseberry for some more information. But I'm just going to go into a few differentiating characteristics to help you tell species apart. Now, in this stage, it is easy, plain and simple to tell these two apart. Just on first initial exposure to this plant. Flowers are much different. The flowers hang down. They're reddish colored. They have red petals and red sepals, and very long exserted stamens that hang down quite dramatically from the shrubs. Let's get a little bit of a close-up here. So that's right there is the fuchsia-flowered gooseberry blossom. There are some other things to consider. Now, like I said before, and I'll keep saying it again, just to drive the point home, probably ad nauseum, but gooseberries and currants, A, are closely related. B, gooseberries tend to have bristly and spiny stems as opposed to relatively smooth, unarmed stems of currants. So, as we move over here to this currant, we're going to move over back to our subject. I established that the twigs are unarmed, they're smooth, and they're relatively safe for handling. You won't have to worry about poking yourself. However, if we go over back to the fuchsia-flowered gooseberry, notice much different appearance. Those red things sticking out, those are those spiny projections. And they're relatively soft on this new growth, but once this growth hardens off a little bit towards later in the spring, those are going to be quite a bit like hypodermic needles. They're going to poke you pretty hardcore. Now, as you see here, I'm gently touching this. Look at the bristly, spiny projections on this branch here. Let me see if I can get it out more in the sun so we can see it better. Look at that. That's pretty fierce. These things are covered. These things are not as fun to handle with bare hands because of the fact that these things can puncture you pretty fiercely. And that also leads into another aspect of this plant. The fruits are quite different on gooseberries than they are on currants. Currants are generally smooth, berry-like, and currants are usually a lot easier to handle. But gooseberries are bristly, and their bristles can be sharp enough to poke your skin as well when they develop their berry-like fruits as well. So that's how you can kind of tell on the outside the difference between these two. So the leaves are kind of similar. You saw some of the leaves on the golden currant that were really well lobed. Well, there's some variability on the fuchsia flower gooseberry, but you can see the leaves here are generally more scalloped edged. They have some cuts into them, but they do get some lobation. Some of these lower leaves here exhibit some lobation, especially on more vigorous stems. More vigorous juvenile stems will often exhibit some lobation, but there's a little bit more of a shininess, a sheen to the foliage of the fuchsia flower gooseberry, and the leaves are slightly thicker when mature, whereas it's just a bright lemony green on the golden currant without as much of a shine or a sheen to it. And then when these plants are leafless during the dry season, another thing you can do is look to see if the one plant has the spiny projections all over the twigs. If that's the case, it's a gooseberry. If it doesn't, it's probably a currant. And that hopefully should be a little bit helpful in separating these two, especially during times of the year when they're not flowering. So hopefully that will help out a little bit. But let me get a couple of pictures of these plants, and we'll go into some more details about the habitat and ecology. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ecological aspects of our yellow or golden, slender golden currant. So where we are, we're maybe about 100 to 200 feet above sea level, roughly here. So it's generally a low elevation plant, relatively low cold tolerance, pretty good for a milder version of the Mediterranean climate. Wet winter, summer dry, winter not that cold. Down here, I believe we are in zone 9B or maybe even 10A. And so this area, but this is actually a subclimate. This is actually a microclimate of that. So we are in a canyon, so we do get some cold, probably get some cold air drainage. So it might be a little cooler down here at night than it is even just 20 feet above on 20 feet here and 40 feet here above on the mesa. So we probably do get some cold air drainage. And this plant does likely tolerate some temperatures a little bit below freezing, but I don't believe that it's going to be something that's going to tolerate temperatures down to the 10 degrees for very long periods of time or lower, as this is generally a milder coastal climate here as opposed to where its other cousin lives. It's Ribes aureum verdant, where some areas might get pretty cold winters, if I'm reading that correctly. But another thing is it tends to prefer the edges of woodlands, the edges of chaparral, especially on north-facing slopes. This is a north-facing slope right here. So where we are is in a what we call Toyon sumac shrubland, which is a mesic, aka moister version of coastal sage scrub. And this would probably be also found in chaparral and on the edges of woodlands and maybe forests. Probably coast live oak and the edge of sycamore woodlands. Generally a little bit outside of the riparian area, as you see here. This is more of the riparian area, even though it's channelized, so that's why we don't have many willows or anything growing here, but it tends to like these shadier slopes where moisture is retented even longer than it would be on these drier slopes over here. So, edge of woodlands, edge of chaparrals, and shrublands on north-facing slopes, sometimes canyon bottoms. Again, probably at the edges of here, probably coast live oak and toyon, and of course lemonade berry, which this is right here. But it definitely likes to be in a little bit more sheltered area, as a lot of our gooseberries and currants, not everyone, but a lot of them tend to prefer, including, maybe to a slightly lesser degree, fuchsia flower gooseberry. So slender golden currant likes to be in these shadier north-facing slopes, in canyons and on slopes underneath woodlands. So what else about this plant is so poignant? Currants and gooseberries tend to be a hit among hummingbirds. Now here we are. Ever since I've been here, I've been seeing hummingbirds coming over to the fuchsia flower gooseberry. Hummingbirds love fuchsia flower gooseberries. Their long bills are able to get into the tubular shaped flowers. Now they will go to currants as well. They will go to currants to get the nectar out of them. And this is also a very important bee shrub. The whole time I've been here, I've just been under the constant hum of honeybees. So you see right there, what we got right there is Apis mellifera mellifera, the European honeybee, enjoying the nectar of these plants. These are nectar-rich flowers, so the pollinators are going to be hitting these hard. Now, probably haven't seen too many hummingbirds coming to this shrub here in particular because I've been here filming, so wildlife tends to be a little on the shyer side, but probably get the point. Currants and gooseberries are pretty important hummingbird flowers. And a lot of the gooseberries tend to have the narrower flower profile, so the hummingbirds tend to be able to get their bills in there. But currant flowers are also pretty important to them, as these gooseberries and currants are nice nectar flowers for these awesome hummingbirds we have here. Mostly Anna's hummingbird is usually the one I see around here, but all in all, what a cool find. A rare find here in San Diego County. Looking on CalFlora, I've only seen it vouchered in maybe one or two spots. One or two spots. In fact, it's not even listed in James Leitner's San Diego County Native Plants Field Guide book. Believe it or not, it's not even listed in there. It is that rare here in San Diego County. However, proof is in the pudding. It's right here in Rancho Mission Canyon. One of maybe two, maybe three spots, if even that, of this plant being vouchered. And I just happen to live pretty close to Rancho Mission Canyon and see it for myself. So there you have it. Slender Golden Currant, Ribes aureum variety gracillimum, in beautiful Rancho Mission Canyon. I just want to thank you for checking out my spotlight video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative in uncovering a pretty rare to this area species. More common further north you go in California, but here in San Diego County, very rare. So where I am, just for reference, is I'm in the southwestern portion of Rancho Mission Canyon open space. Just about less than a quarter of a mile to this way is Conestoga Court, and this way leads to Marjoram Avenue at about 0.6 miles. So if you just want a short hike to this plant, park somewhere on Conestoga and just walk the short distance. The cul-de-sac, or the trailhead is very short distance over that way. Get on Conestoga Court, hike over and check out these plants for yourself. But just be mindful that they are rare here in San Diego County, so treat them with the utmost respect But most of all, enjoy these beautiful shrubs. Coming here in late February through March, and probably April and May for the fruits on this plant would be a pretty worthy trip. Very short, very easy, basically no elevation gain, maybe 10 feet. Easy walking to get here. Just a beautiful plant. Beautiful plant. So thanks for watching my spotlight. I will see you on the next one, and take care.